and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hi, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my business partner and co-host, Tom Dillon. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Oh, very well.
Very good.
Feeling very tanned and...
You're feeling tanned?
Yeah. Well, no, kind of just chilled, having been away for a few days. We're back and, yeah.
It's been nice, hasn't it?
Tanned is how I feel.
Fabulous.
How are you, anyway?
I feel the same. Very rested and ready to pick things up again.
Wonderful.
Thank you. What are we going to be talking about today?
Today we are talking about leadership.
Leadership.
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily leadership coaching, but leadership in the coaching room.
Okay.
So I've been coaching leaders for a long time, sort of 15 years. And really all of my coaching has been organizational coaching. So there's always an element of leadership involved in coaching someone within an organization. Because leadership appears throughout organizations, not necessarily those with line management responsibility. Leadership shows up in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, and even actually outside of organisational coaching, because I tend to not be involved with organisational coaching, I think leadership can have its place where someone is looking to make a change in the world as well. I've certainly worked with clients who want to make a difference. Particularly one springs to mind straight away in the environmental movement, and her leadership has created some wonderful projects within her community and beyond that she has led. So I think leadership is a really interesting area to think about.
Sounds like she's using some inspirational leadership in what she's doing.
Yeah.
Good. And I think for our listeners, anyone that's involved in a GP practice will probably take the lead on something within the practice. Certainly if you're a GP partner, there's definitely going to be some leadership involved. And you might not be the designated person heading up leadership and people within the practice, but by virtue of the fact you are a GP partner, then you are going to have a leadership role and responsibility within the practice. So I think that's definitely, and obviously within a hospital setting, as people go through their careers and progress, then they will take on more responsibility, and an element of that will be leadership, even if it's not a designated, you are a leader now, there will be that. And I think for a lot of doctors, that's quite problematic because their training tends not to be around leadership. I think there are definitely leadership offerings for training within the NHS. There's a leadership academy. So people can definitely access that and take advantage of it. But I don't think everyone does. And I think it's quite easy to end up as an accidental leader. Where you have some leadership responsibility, but you've got no idea how to do it.
Well, it's like management, isn't it? People get promoted to management because they're good at their job, but not necessarily good at management.
Yeah. And that tends to be the case, doesn't it? And a lot of, that's what I would term an accidental leader, is that, well, you're really good at this. We'll put you into a management position and you can organise other people doing it. And sometimes people are really good at that, but accidentally good at it. And I've done quite a bit of management training, trained managers over my time, and quite often the people that come to the management training are already in management positions and maybe have been for a number of years without any management training whatsoever. And the same with leadership. People end up in leadership positions without ever having been given access to leadership training. So I think it can be difficult for someone in that position to know what they could and perhaps should be doing.
Yeah, so they may well come to coaching looking for some support around that.
Yeah, although to be honest, people tend to come as leaders just with problems that are not necessarily, they will be generally people problems, but they're not necessarily seeing that as I need some help with my leadership. It's just, well, I've got this problem. What do I do about it? And I don't see myself as a in that situation, as my role is to train them how to be a leader, but we definitely have conversations with them about their leadership style and how they're showing up, but also what might be useful. So in the last episode, we were talking about difficult conversations. That might be an area in which someone as a leader doesn't know how to go about having difficult conversations.
Yeah. No, I'm aware we've talked about management, we've talked about leadership, and I like a definition. When we talk about leadership here, how are we defining it?
There are a number of definitions of leadership, but I would and Peter Drucker, who was kind of big management consultant in the 70s, 80s. I think he did a lot of work in Japan, in the kind of reindustrialization of Japan after the war. So very well respected. But he would say that a leader is someone that has followers. Mm-hmm. That's his very simple definition.
Okay.
Being a leader. But in trying to differentiate between leadership and management, he would have said that management is doing things right. Leadership is about doing the right things.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So more about thinking about what could be done rather than making sure that it is done.
Interesting.
So quite often managers aren't involved in any sort of strategic thinking, whereas that's definitely an element of leadership that you would get involved in the future. Thinking about the future, maybe thinking about the organization's mission, their values, the vision, the strategy, and then how that strategy then gets implemented.
So you could be someone who is a leader within an organization in terms of how you want to impact the organization, but not in terms of your role. So you might be a leader in your personality, in your identity, without being a manager.
Yeah, and so if you think about a GP practice, you might have someone who's really interested in lifestyle medicine, and no one else is particularly that bothered. I'm sure they would be, but hypothetically. So they are leading the initiative around lifestyle medicine and pushing that forward. So they might not have the role as a leader, but they might be a salaried GP, but heading up the lifestyle medicine initiative. So leading on that. Yeah.
So you already mentioned a couple of things, but let's think about how we might get involved as a coach.
Yeah, so it's just what's going to show up in the room, isn't it? So whatever people are bringing into the room. And as people go up the ladder, and I think it starts to get lonelier, so there are fewer people around you to bounce ideas off. And certainly the leaders that I come into contact with, so someone I've just been coaching, very senior, like the top person in his organization, has no one to talk to about his vulnerabilities and his worries, because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to put that on everyone else, but he doesn't want to show weakness by telling people he's worried about stuff. So coming to a coaching session, I mean, lovely that he feels able to open up and be honest with me about what's going on for him, but great for him to have that space to share his vulnerabilities.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I really like that, because it's amazing how often I come across loneliness in the coaching room, and maybe that's something to discuss another time. It tends to come out of conversations rather than as the point of the conversation. But you mentioned earlier about strategy and doing the right things, so that having a conversation, having that safe space to discuss what those right things are and how they can be implemented is one area, and that space for personally feeling heard and listened to and not feeling lonely is another area. I like that. I don't think that's something that you would initially think of as leadership coaching. No,
but I think it goes on a lot. I think having someone that you trust to just have those open and honest conversations with can be really useful. I was listening to a podcast the other day where someone was talking about the CEO of an NHS trust is in an impossible situation where they don't have enough resources, but can't say we don't have enough resources to bring about the changes you want, to bring about the results you want to see. We just can't do it. No one is going to say that, because there are a dozen people standing in the wings going, I could do it. I could do a much better job than he's doing or she's doing. Let me do it. So you can't say that out loud, even though you know that with the resources available, you can't possibly produce the results that people are expecting of you. So you have to go, yes, we will get waiting list down. We will do all sorts of things when there just aren't the resources to do. So then you put pressure on everyone else below you because you're going along with it. But there's no answer to that because, like I say, if you say, well, sorry, we just can't do that. We don't have the resources. Then you'll be sacked and someone else will be brought in. So that's a really lonely place to be, isn't it? Yeah. For you to sit there knowing that you can't possibly do the job you're being asked to do. And that you can't, but not being able to say that out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a really important role that we can have as a coach, is being that confidential sounding board. So if I'm with a leader and they're talking about their strategy, I've never come across a leader who wants me to tell them how to do strategy. They might say, I don't have a lot of experience of strategy, so I'm struggling a little bit, but they wouldn't expect me to go, oh, this is how you do strategy. So it doesn't turn into a training exercise. We'll talk about what their understanding is and how they might resource themselves better to think about strategy, but that's their job. But we can talk about what their thoughts are and what they're trying to achieve. And strategy is complex, but I think people that are in that leadership position are well equipped to deal with what is required of them from a strategic point of view, and will have resources around them, people around them that they can call on to think about strategy. So I think when they come to coaching, it's really about, okay, these are my thoughts. This is what, and they're just saying it out loud so they can hear it. Yeah. And they will make sense of it by saying it out loud. So I have some understanding of strategy. I can have a good conversation with people around strategy, but it's not normally what's being asked of me. It's normally, okay, these are my ideas. This is what I want to do. And I'm just letting them have the space to think about it properly.
Doing coaching.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but I think there tends to be a little bit of a wariness around that leadership role, that if someone suddenly within a coaching session, if you were coaching a leader, suddenly started to talk about, well, I've got to put this strategy together and I'm not really sure how to go about doing it, that we're expected then to step in and tell them how to do it. And I still don't think that's our role.
So what other areas might someone want some coaching around leadership in?
I think quite often it's about the people and difficulties they're having with certain individuals or maybe groups of people within an organisation. So they tend to come with a scenario in mind and we'll play that scenario out for us. And then again, it's about us offering that space for them to explore it, asking really good questions about what's going on so that they get a better sense of it, feel more equipped to handle the situation. So it could be someone difficult in their team. It could be that they can't do what people are asking them to do. So it's just holding the space for people. But I would say probably 90% of the coaching that I do with leaders is about other people.
What's the other 10%?
So quite often it can be around the vision, them thinking through what their vision is for the organisation. And they might not be the only one thinking about that, but at least if they can come to coaching and air their views and really think about what their vision is, then that can be really useful. It could be around their values and the organisation's values, and whether those two things are aligned, whether they're in that position that their values are the organisational values because they've made it so, or whether their values aren't aligned to the organisational values. All sorts of things could be discussed around values. Could be around their development as a leader. So they might feel they've got some gaps in their leadership knowledge and they might be thinking about how they develop. And there's obviously plenty of scope for people to develop in terms of emotional intelligence, being able to handle people. Could just be about their future objectives. So what their desired outcome is for them as a leader, whether they want to stay within the organisation, how they want to progress within the organisation, whether they actually want to be a leader. All sorts of things that could be talked about. And it could be around their leadership style, because there are different ways that people might show up as a leader. And sometimes that can be problematic. So, and I think another big part of coaching leaders is around their well-being, because they tend not to look after themselves. They tend to be busy. They tend to want to be seen to be there. Well, quite often they need to be there a lot of the time, but they will tend to not be considering their well-being an awful lot. So that's definitely a big element of leadership coaching, is making sure they're taking care of themselves so they can take care of others.
Indeed, or at least having that conversation with them.
Definitely. Yeah. I know we've said this before, that all coaching should be well-being coaching.
Yeah.
That should be first. There's no point in people having grand goals if it's going to destroy their lives, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay. So what are the ways that a leader might lead? Or show up to lead?
Okay. Well, I think there are a number of different ways, and it's perhaps something to talk through a bit more fully. So maybe if we adjourn for the moment and come back to the next episode. We're doing another double-handed episode.
We are.
We're going to carry on into the next episode. So let's make the next episode about different leadership styles and how people might...
Perfect.
Where and when they might be useful and how people might show up as a leader. So what are you taking away from this conversation, Helen, in terms of leadership in the coaching room?
I think what I'm taking away from it is that there is concepts of leadership that you've spoken about, that space that can be held for leaders with good foundational coaching skills. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
As a good coach.
Yeah. I mean, it would be very difficult with just... So we run a transformational coaching course, and almost everything that we talk about on that course, train on that course, could be used in a leadership context.
Yeah.
I think it would be difficult for someone to say, I'm a leadership coach on the basis of doing that work.
Yes.
I think you would need to have some understanding of some of the challenges that a leader might face. So,
however, if someone came to you, had coaching from you and wanted to bring some of their leadership queries, questions, debates from inside their head into that space, we don't need to shy away from it. No,
not at all. No. We're holding that space for them however they show up. And if I think about my career, I started off as a leadership coach. Well, that's my first paid for coaching, was all leadership coaching. It wasn't, some of it was called leadership coaching. Some of it was on the back of leadership programs that were being organized by the organizations that they work for. Some was where I was being wheeled in to coach someone who was in a leadership position. And I used to call myself a leadership coach. So that's kind of the work that I got. I don't do that anymore. I call myself a transformational coach now, but I still operate in that space. So I can't recall a coaching session I've had. I just can't recall one that hasn't been around leadership. But it's not necessarily leadership as, say, in terms of devising a strategy. It's more about how they show up and how other people show up, and how they navigate that space. So I think we don't have to be afraid of that label of leadership coaching. So if you are in a position where you're coaching, and we've trained consultants to coach other consultants. Yeah. So they're definitely in that leadership space. So the issues that people are bringing to that coaching are going to be around leadership in one form or another.
And I think if you're in a leadership role and you have the knowledge of the organisation and the knowledge of your experience through that and your career trajectory through that, and then you learn to coach and you bring all of that together, then you are in a position to be a leadership coach. Yeah,
and those people, those consultants that we've trained, we've not trained them as leadership coaches.
No.
They are transformational coaches. They're helping people in their role, and that's maybe in terms of their well-being. So what I would say is, if you are training as a coach, so if you've done our transformational coaching program, you have a leader in front of you, don't be worried about the fact there's a leader in front of you. You are very unlikely to be asked to devise a strategy for their organisation. Tends not to be what leadership coaching is all about.
Brilliant. I think that's
good.
A really
but
good
next
place.
time we will actually talk about leadership and leadership styles and how people show up in that leadership context, because I think that's useful just to reflect on. So let's do that next time.
Absolutely.
So we'll say goodbye for now. In the meantime, if you are enjoying our podcast, do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Do recommend it to your friends. Give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you use. And we look forward to being with you next time.
Bye for now.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.